review actually. It's the Sedona Lace 168 Pro Full Color Eyeshadow Palette. I pulled it up on my computer just so I get the name right. But this is the first edition of the palette. There is a second one. I felt like this one was more suited for me though, just because it has a bit more neutrals than the second one. The second one's like a lot, almost all like crazy colors. So I wanted to have some sort of balance so that I could try out both their neutrals and their crazy colors as well. Before I get started talking about the actual palette though, I wanted to say that this palette was provided for review purposes, but I'm not being compensated for it. So I hope you guys have come to assume anyway that I am being completely honest with you guys, which I am, and I will be talking about what I like as well as what I don't. So I hope you guys find this informative and helpful, and I guess let's get started. So the palette is right here, and it's actually a lot more compact than I expected. I feel like these palettes were talked about a lot on YouTube over the past few years, and everyone always said they're a lot smaller than they expected, but you just don't really know, I guess, until you have one. But it's so true. They're really actually nice and small right here. And since it is so small, you can also expect that the shadows themselves are pretty small. So this is what this first layer looks like. This is a double-decker palette here. It has this ribbon to help you lift up the layers, and as much as I would love to do that in the air, I don't trust myself. I'll probably drop it, so I'm going to use my desk for a little assistance here. So this is the first layer. As you can tell, it has a bunch of purples and pinks in the middle. Also has a neutral row over here. It's very warm. And then this is like the whites and up to the black, all that whole spectrum. So that is the first layer. What's nice about this as far as structure goes is that you can put the two next to each other. You just put the first layer on the lid and it sits very nicely like that. So when you're working with it, you can really have both of those nicely laid out in front of you. So that's a really good bonus. The second layer here has the blues and greens and turquoisey colors, as well as like a row of yellowy gold shades, and then 2 rows of neutrals, which were the ones that I was particularly drawn to, as you can expect. So that is that layer. So I wanted to sort of go in some sort of like structure as far as this review goes. So I want to talk about pigmentation first, and I did do a few random swatches. I'll do a close-up of it so you guys can see that as well. So I really took just a bunch of random ones I thought you guys might want to see. I did take this neon pink here, and then I did a purple, a black with some silver shimmer in it, a matte yellow, a matte blue, a shimmery green, a shimmery like bronzy shade, which I am wearing today, and then a matte light medium brown right here. So as you can tell, they are pigmented. This is just on my bare hand. There's no primer or anything. So it is pretty overall very pigmented. This purple right here is the only one that I swatched that kind of isn't quite as bright as I would expect from it. Let me show you guys what this one looks like in the palette itself. So this purple right here is the one that I swatched. So it does look like it would be a bit more vibrant than it does show up. But again, this is without primer on my hand, and with primer you can assume that it would be a bit brighter. Speaking of primer, they did send me their Stick It To 'Em primer, which I really like that name because it's really cute. But I do have to say that this primer works just as well as any other primer that I've used. It's definitely comparable to higher end primers like the Urban Decay Primer Potion, the Too Faced Shadow Insurance, stuff like that. It does have that same sort of texture to it as well. It is a squeezy tube, and it has that sort of like nude shade, and then when you blend it out, it pretty much becomes transparent. So that is that primer. I have used this palette for 3 looks, just solely this palette. I've incorporated some colors into some other looks, but as far as using just this palette, I've done 3 looks. So the first one, I will insert a couple pictures as I'm talking about them. The first one, I did a very neutral look. I used a few of the shadows in this warm row here from that top layer, as well as some of the neutrals from that bottom layer that I showed you guys. Let me just show you again. So these 2 rows right here, I used some of those as well. And I also incorporated just a little bit of this plum color in that look as well, just to, I really like working with purpley shades, so I used that one. And that was the first time that I used this palette as a whole for my makeup, and I was very impressed. The second look was very different from the first one. It's super crazy rainbow, and I did that one yesterday actually, and I feel like this primer, I don't know if it's the primer or if it's the actual shadows themselves, but this look stayed on all day, and the color intensity was just as high as it was when I applied them. I was seriously so shocked by this. I got home, let's see, it must have been like 11:30 because I had to go to rehearsal last night, but I mean, it was crazy. Like, I had this yellow around the inner corners of my eyes, and normally that's where I have some issue with wearing. I mean, if I highlight there, generally throughout the day it'll start to disappear. But this yellow, guys, was there when I got home at night. Like, it was the craziest thing. It was so pigmented. I was just like, it's insane. So I don't know if I have the primer to thank or just the shadows themselves have really, really crazy lasting power, but it was intense. And lastly, the look that I'm wearing today is all from this palette as well. I used this bronzy shade, as I mentioned. So this bronzy shade right here, I used on my lids today. I did use more of that plum color as well as just some of more of the neutrals in the palette. But and I also incorporated some green on the lower lash line as well. So that was today's look, and overall, I feel like you can most definitely get a full look with this palette. I mean, there's neutrals, there's colors, you can really do pretty much anything with it. So I did want to talk about where I do feel like this palette falters. So I am incredibly impressed with the matte shades in this palette. I mean, they are fantastic. It's actually pretty shocking. You don't expect the mattes to perform well in a palette of this size. Generally, the shimmery ones are the ones I feel like you can expect to be really, really great. But I feel like it's actually the reverse in this case. I do feel like, not a lot, but there are quite a few shimmery shades in this palette that are very powdery. I'll insert a close-up of these so you guys can sort of tell what I'm talking about. They're not impossible to work with. I mean, I'm wearing one today. This bronzy shade that I swatched here is very powdery and has a lot of fallout. That's something to keep in mind. I don't think it's necessarily a terrible thing or anything like that, but it just makes it a little bit more difficult to work with if you aren't used to working with like looser shadows. Overall, if you're someone who really likes color, or if you're someone who's interested in playing with color, absolutely check out this palette. I do definitely recommend it for that purpose itself. There are so many colors in here that you can't really go wrong. There's only really one shade that I was missing in here, and it's a perfect olive green. You guys know I have an unhealthy obsession with olive green, and there are a ton of greens in this palette, but I don't feel like there was my perfect olive green shade in here. So that's just something, I mean, it's obviously not a big deal. I don't think other people are as obsessed with olive green as I am, so it's not really something to worry about. But seriously, the mattes in this palette are so impressive. I mean, really, I was just shocked by how great they are. And I haven't even used all of them. I've used quite a few, but just overall, they're very, very nice. So I do have a discount code for you guys for $4 off using the code TheKtizzle, and I will link this palette as well as just the Sedona Lace general website in the description box below. If you are interested in checking them out, they have this palette as well as a bunch of other ones, and they also have a bunch of really cool brushes too if you're curious about that. So that is it for today. I hope you guys liked this review. Let me know what you thought about it, or if you have any sort of palette like this, and I'm actually curious to know what kind of looks you guys do. Like, do you wear colorful stuff on a daily basis? Because when I was wearing those rainbow eyes yesterday, I was actually pretty like self-conscious about it, because I was just like, I don't know if people would be like, why is she wearing that? But, you know, I just gotta take some chances sometimes. It was fun. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and if you're wondering about my hair,
I was feeling very Megan Rosette today, because she's been rocking like the Dutch braid on Instagram a lot, so I was like, I'm going to Dutch braid it out too. So I don't know if it turned out so well. It's my first time doing it, but yeah, I tried. A for effort, maybe?
Okay, thanks for watching. Bye.